But I actually think that recording a podcast in this environment is actually better than an antiseptic studio where you're in this sort of soundproof, perfect environment, right? I think as a documentary filmmaker, you would, sometimes those happy accidents or those things where a perfect setting is not always the best setting.
Totally. The imperfections are what make it perfect, if you will, right?
As an audio engineer, it's a nightmare.
But I think that authenticity is more important. The authenticity you get from, this is a comfortable environment. I mean, you're on a couch, we're in these comfy chairs, we're in the midst of we're in this bar basically on Melrose Avenue, right?
Right.
It's not open where you'd hear a lot of noise in the background, but I actually like that kind of environment. It feels like you can have a more authentic conversation.
I feel like we just watched a really cool new band play, and we got an early showing, and now we're coming to talk about it. Like, that's the environment, right?
Oh, I should welcome you to the show. Welcome, documentary filmmaker Kerry David to the Film Threat Podcast.
Thank you so much. Very excited to be here.
And we're here to talk about your film, Bill Coors' The Will to Live.
Yeah.
Now, Bill Coors, when we say Bill Coors, we're talking about Bill Coors of the Coors family.
Exactly right. Yeah, him.
And when we say Coors, can I just...
Beer.
Coors, yes. Okay, and I will just say, Coors Light is my drink.
No way.
I'm not. This is not an endorsement. This is not like we're not doing a commercial. I was not paid for this. You were not. There's not.
Not at all.
This is not.
No
this
money
is
exchanged hands.
Okay, so. That is my drink. I like that it's like, I call it, this is going to sound terrible, and Coors would never want this used in their marketing. I call it the all-day beer. Because you can drink a lot of it, and I don't get drunk. I don't get falling down drunk. Because like if I want to do some yard work, or like say I'm going to mow the lawn or paint the garage, I'll start drinking Coors Light in the afternoon, and because you'd have to drink so much of it to get drunk that you would just you'd be in the bathroom all the time.
So basically a ringing endorsement for Coors beer. Okay, I'll let him know.
I mean in a good way. I just, yes.
I have no comment on that.
Well, I mean, look, I live in the land of beer snobs, which is Los Angeles. There are a lot of beer snobs here.
I'm raising my hand on that one.
I have been teased relentlessly because, what are you drinking Coors Light for? It's like, because I love it. It is my favorite. It is so, but that's not why you're here.
Did you bring beer for us?
You know what? Now I feel like I really suck because I didn't.
No. But you're not. But Bill Coors, what I didn't realize in watching this documentary, what an incredible life he has had. And we're talking about, he's over 100.
Yeah, he's 102 now.
It's 102
Yeah.
with aspirations to live to 124.
And he described how he was going to do that to me. I don't have a scientific brain, but it seemed to make sense. And I thought, if anyone can do it, this man can do it.
Well, you took on a monumental task, which is to tell the story of this man's life. How did that begin?
So it came to me in a really unique way. So I've been a filmmaker for 25 years, but it came to me through my consulting site. So in between projects, I'll help new and emerging filmmakers. But I had this email from a woman, she was in Cheyenne, and she said that I'm Bill Coors' attorney, and I didn't know who Bill Coors was. And she said, we're trying to make a documentary around Bill Coors' life, and we're struggling because we've had to fire 2 production companies. So I thought, well, then you're clearly the issue, because 1-to-1 maybe, but if it's 2-to-1, I think probably you're the issue. And I thought, okay, I'll get on and I'll tell them how our industry works, which can be confusing to a lot of people who don't know it. Ended up having an amazing conversation with her, and the biographer for Bill, who was working with him, her name is Margot Hamilton. She was also on that first call. And the 3 of us just started talking about just horses and everything but Bill Coors, if you will. And I said, okay, ladies, let's get to it. And I said, I'm from England. I don't know the Coors brewery. I knew nothing about it. I'd heard of it, but... So I said, tell me about this man. And when they started telling me about the life that he had lived and that he met Einstein, they had me at he met Einstein. In all honesty, I'm just like, this is amazing. So I thought, well, how progressive. His attorney's a woman, his biographer's a woman. This man has clearly led a fascinating life. And they were struggling. What I later came to understand was the first production basically threw the towel in, because it was, like you said, a monumental task of how do you tell this man's story when literally every 5 years of his life could be a documentary documentary, and it would be riveting.
No, it's incredible because I mean he struggled with depression for much of his life.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it due to the fact that he lost his first son his first son was 20 months old and
24
died
months, yeah.
in a tragic choking accident. It was horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my only fear. My only fear in life is losing one of my kids.
Of course.
So horrifying. There's that aspect. His brother died. I mean, you could tell the story.
So his brother, called Adolf, they called him Ad, kidnapped and murdered, and it was, and then that made Bill the oldest son because Adolf had been the oldest son prior to that, and they didn't know what had happened to him. Bill actually moved in with his brother's wife while they were trying to find out what was happening. They got a kidnapper's ransom note. What they later found out, which was so tragic, was that he'd actually been murdered the same day that he was kidnapped, if you will, because he had stopped to help a man who had broken down in his car, which was deployed to get. Yeah, so that's the kind of guy he was, right? So he pulls over to help this guy whose car's broken down. The guy pulls out a gun. Ad turns to run to get back in his car, and he was shot in the back and killed that day. So they found his remains 7 or 8 months later.
Horrifying.
But the family never talked about all of these traumas in their life. Like their grandfather jumped from a 9-story building and committed suicide, and he was a billionaire, and again in that era, a tycoon. So they never talked about all these tragedies, and they didn't know how. I mean, I would say right in our generation we're learning how to talk about these tragic events, and I think that was part of his journey, was when he was realizing he started to fail in life. He knew there was something wrong with him and he didn't know what it was. And when he went to the Mayo Clinic and they said, well, look, the good news is that you're in excellent health, but there's a million other guys who are presenting with the same things you are. And it didn't have a name, didn't have depression then. And so Bill thought, right, he did drink for a little while, but that didn't obviously work. And he'd had alcohol problems in the family, didn't want to start that. And so he decided to go on this 25-year journey holistically to find out what was wrong with him and to cure himself.
Well, I mean, the film delves into that and so many other aspects. I mean, he was also an innovator technologically speaking. He created the aluminum can, which, we all sort of just take for granted today, right? I mean, aluminum cans are just a part of, this is how we transport liquid, right? But that was a new innovation and innovated recycling.
He did. And what was fascinating was that he actually innovated that you bring your can back and we give you a penny back, right? Which back in the day would amass. And what I think I've loved about most of Bill's, his mind is brilliant and he's a real progressive forward thinker, but they're very simple, the things that it's almost like he takes a lot of time to think about these issues and what's going on, and he comes up with the most simplest form to address it. And that's something I've taken away. I try not now to overcomplicate things if I can, and I've had so many life lessons watching, obviously being in the edit bay as long as we were, and actually we were under the clock because in my contract it said time is of the essence, because he was 100 when he hired me. So we didn't, I mean, bless his heart, he's amazingly strong, but we didn't know. And so it was like, get this film made. And the challenge was there were so many things to address. How do you tell an emotional story? I didn't want it to just be factual. I wanted to show the titan the man behind the titan, because that's what people can connect to. And I asked him what his legacy, of everything that he's done, what do you want your legacy to be? And he said, I want kids today, and when he says kids, I'm thinking late 18, early 20s, not to struggle the way that I did, and I see them struggling the way that I did, and if I can leave anything behind, it's to show them what I learned in that 25 years, holistically, to manage my stress. So he never says he's cured of depression, he doesn't say that, but he says, I manage my stress this way. So what's been so amazing as a filmmaker at the festivals that we played is to watch the kids of that age bracket be so affected by the film, and I've seen them streaming with tears and saying, I want all my friends to see this film. So I think we hit the mark. But
definitely, because there are sequences in the film where you connect it to this program that kids go through, and you see these montages of kids explaining the challenges that they're faced with, and how difficult it is to deal with. Especially at that stage of life, I think that certain things are more challenging. Sure. Whether it's just like managing your life, or just dealing with illness or financial stress, etc. And it's amazing to see like the benefits of going to the
Outward Bound,
which is the camp that was funded by
he bought it to Colorado. So
right,
he bought it existed, but he bought it to Colorado in a huge way. Like he even got gang members. That there was a lot at that time that it came to Colorado, is that there was a lot of gang warfare in, which I think is kind of funny. I think about Denver, you don't think about gang warfare. Maybe South Central, but apparently it was pretty bad in the school system. And he said, well, why don't we put these kids through this Outward Bound program? They'll either end up friends or they'll kill each other, and hopefully they'll end up friends. And they did. I mean, it was, again, connecting with nature. It just seems so simple, but until you do it and really connect with it. Bill has this great saying. He said, I thought mountain climbing was for idiots and mountain goats, and there I was happily climbing mountains, a fool, but he absolutely loved it.
And he also, he came up with methods to deal with his health. And I think that at the time, like you were saying, there weren't words for these things. There wasn't a language to even speak about it. He's really into meditation.
Mm-hmm. Big time.
So tell me about that.
So one of the things, he was actually at the forefront of holistic medicine. When, we now think of acupuncture as like, it's just something that you can go and do on a Saturday. You have to remember, we're talking about a man who's lived for over a century now. So when he was first looking and experiencing these holistic ways in which to deal with what was going on, they were sort of trial and error. He tried chelation, which is when you bring the blood in and you circle it through the body, and you try to make yourself healthy that way. Acupuncture, and then he actually brought it into the wellness center for his employees because it was working for him.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when you think about it, think of the money you save by just keeping your employees healthy.
Yeah.
It's really, shouldn't preventative medicine really be the number one thing?
Yes.
You do see strides in that where, fast food restaurants offer healthy choices, right? The consumption of, sugared drinks has dropped dramatically to the point where now Coke and Pepsi, both Coke and Pepsi, they make the top selling waters, right? Like they're all no, seriously. It's like, okay, we got to get in the water business because this sugar water thing. It's like, look, having a sugared soda with every meal is a ridiculous thought, right? Like so I feel like it's those big changes. They take time. It's like I don't know.
But what I think is a really big factor is, and I'm sure you guys have noticed this lately, is that all the documentaries, the beautifully well-made, interesting documentaries. It used to be documentaries like Roll Your Eyes. Oh God, this is like a PBS special. Sorry, PBS. But now you have really fascinating. Like my friends who came with me are both vegans because they watched the documentary Fork Over Knife about 4 years ago, and they went cold turkey, and they are my heroes. I'm struggling and trying so hard to be a vegetarian, let alone a vegan. But they again, the quality of documentaries that are out right now, I think, with the sugar, I think Katie Couric did something, I didn't actually see it, but I heard it was really well done. I think we're having that kind of information delivered to us in a way that it's palatable, and it isn't sort of, you will do this and this is why. It's a very different style of documentary that we're now accepting, and I hope that I've kind of keyed into that, because mine's not a normal documentary. It's not structured like a normal documentary. And I actually thought I was going to take, can I swear?
Yes, yeah, you totally.
A shit ton. Yeah. I thought I was going to take a shit ton of hits on how that's not structured. I thought, I don't care how this is structured. This is, you try and cram 100 years of somebody's life while also trying to give a beautiful message to students today. While we've got all around the country, you've got kids going crazy with guns and taking it to schools because they're not being heard. They have mental problems. They don't know how to talk about them with their families.
And even social media. Social media has created such a new pressure, a whole new set of problems.
Yeah.
Now that I think we don't even know what the effect is. I think that social media has had on I think all of us. We're all sort of these guinea pigs, right? Mm-hmm. Social media has really been around for almost a decade on a mainstream level where everyone has it, right? As soon as Facebook opened it up to everybody, that's when it began to take hold about almost 10 years ago.
Being so confused when my mom added me as a friend on Facebook.
What do you do with that?
Yeah. I was like, I thought this was kind of like a my age type thing. Now my grandma has a Facebook. That's really weird.
Hey, it's not just for millennials. Facebook's for everybody. But then we've seen problems with this and how it's affected. But all of that comes to, if not that, it's something else. All this comes to, dealing with your physical and mental health, which
Yeah.
is something Bill Coors, I'm not going to say he conquered it, but boy, he lived, I had a grandmother, my grandma Bear, that lived to 100.
Wow, that's cool.
And what they don't, I don't know if you know this, but if you live to 100, you get a letter from the president.
So in England, you get a letter from the Queen. So that
You
doesn't
do?
surprise me.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So you get a letter from the president. So so my grandma Bear got the letter.
Cool.
She didn't live much long past that, but I find that the way he was able to get his different houses in order, so to speak, right? I mean, it was, business house, right?
Yeah.
These are the buckets,
Yeah.
right? You've got the business house or the business bucket, getting that in order and making that function.
Yeah.
A company that has some practices that now it's a brand that's lasted into, yes, and I gave my resounding endorsement at the beginning, but that's not why, you're on the show. But like, there's that bucket, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's sort of all the buckets that we all need to get in order. It's sort of resource management in your life. You've got maybe these with any. You'll understand this, any video game where you've got like resource management, all the dials can't be at 100%. If this dial's at 100%, the other ones are lower, right? So how do you get that balance? He talks
Gotta
about
manage your stats.
right. He talks about balance.
He does,
and
yeah.
how it's sort of mental health, physical health, your financial health.
So
people in your life, family is a dial, but all of those, to have them all at 100 is nearly impossible. And Bill, at least from what I saw in the doc, was able to figure out how to get them as high functioning as possible.
Yeah, he boils it down to 3 essentials, which is sleep, nutrition, and working out. So and
Yes.
health. There are his 3 monikers. I mean, he meditates twice a day, even today. He was rowing and rowing almost saved him because he had no definition of who he was as a young kid. And then when he found rowing, and he actually idealized a guy who was a head rower. I think it was Princeton, and he thought, well, I can maybe be like him. And so he strived to be good enough to get on the team, and he got on the team and he made varsity rowing. And then rowing became his life, and he never stopped. So that was something that kept him physically fit his entire life. Now, he's not rowing right now. He is not as strong as he was. He had a stroke, unfortunately, 6 months ago. So he's not as mobile as he was. But that was something that he could row in. He had a rowing machine inside. Sometimes we were like weeks and weeks, like 12, 14 hours in the edit bay, just literally wading through all the archival footage, what to put in, what is promoting the message, what's going to key with people today. How do you make Bill's message from a 102-year-old man relevant to a 20-something today? And when you may have picked up on it, you may not have, but when I first introduced the influencers and YouTubers in the documentary, I purposefully make them in a small screen. And as the film, and you're thinking, they don't belong in this film. Who are these people? What is this juxtaposition? But as the film ends, every time you see them, that screen gets a little bit bigger. So at the very end, you realize it's been 100 years and these guys are struggling with the same thing that Bill struggled with, and actually their stories are exactly the same. They're not different. And so something has to give and something has to change. And you were talking about how does social media affect us, that we're all guinea pigs. I think we're seeing it in these shootings at school, that kids are this peer pressure that they can't live up to. If I'm not going to be a Kardashian, maybe I'll take out my whole school and I'll be remembered that way. I don't even know how you'd put this into law, but it ought to be that if you are that shooter, that no one is allowed to mention your name. Ever. No, and that way there's nothing, you'll never be remembered for something, but
no photos on the news,
nothing. Because it's like, okay, if I can't be famous, I'll be notorious. They have no friends, mostly they're loners. Often it's mental health. I think that the documentary hits on 3 key elements of, I didn't know at the time how timely it is that it's an amazing immigration story, when obviously immigration is a huge issue nationwide here. But without that immigrant coming over from Germany and stowing away on a ship, there would be no Coors beer and you'd be a very unhappy man.
I would be depressed.
Or you could say you wouldn't know what you're missing, but let's go with depressed. And so then there's teen suicide prevention. It's obviously, we want to speak to that, and we want the film to be a conversation starter so that families who don't know how to talk to their teens, they know their teens being locked away in their bedroom, they don't know what's going on in there, they want to have a conversation, they don't know how to start it.
See, I mean, that to me is the key thing. You know what? Put the Black Mirror down, right? Like, put it down for a second. Talk to, your kids at dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, these are just such basic things, but I think that we're so inundated with this, and social media validation is something that I think is important, so important.
Yeah.
At a certain age that we talked to Bo Burnham, who did the movie 8th Grade, and it really deals with a lot of that, like that social media validation being so important and that kind of acceptance. But I think that Bill Coors, having been, fortunate enough to grow up in an era where he was able to explore and innovate. I mean, that's the thing that actually impressed me about the doc, is that he had to kind of make it up.
Yeah.
Because it didn't exist.
Right. He was an innovator. Very progressive thought leader of his time. But I wanted to show, I think you can sort of take any central character right now that we're all focused on, and you can say, what an asshole, or, oh my God, they're amazing.
I know exactly who you're talking about with the other one.
But you know what? You don't know what's going on at home, okay? Like, putting it as simple as possible. If you looked at Bill, I personally could not have come back from one of the tragedies that he came back for, and he had at least 8.
Yeah.
They would cripple you as a human being. I would be a drug addict or an alcoholic, down and out. But how do you bounce back? I'm working on another documentary right now, and I've been in Africa for most of this year, and I was lucky enough at the last minute to be able to climb a 3,000 meter volcano, because I got to hang out with the silverback gorillas at the top. I didn't get fit for it, and I'm climbing up that freaking volcano, and I thought, I'm going to die on this volcano in Rwanda. And I'm a very positive person. I always have been. And halfway up the volcano, I'm thinking, I can't do this. And there were 6. I was the weakest link. I've never been the weakest link. I was the weakest link. It sucks. And I was going, I can't do this. And with every step where the old me would have been like, I can. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Now, I keyed into Bill, and I'm just thinking, what does he tap into to have that will to live? And I know that sounds so trite, that he had to come back from those tragedies, and I'm just climbing up a volcano to see some gorillas. But those gorillas to me were everything for the film. So I had to do it, and I was prepared to die on the mountain. But I thought, what is that difference? Like, who gets to tap inside of you and say, that's the core inside of me. I know that's in there, and I'm going to choose that. I'm not going to choose surrender. It's almost like, someone who commits suicide or doesn't commit suicide, right? Somebody chooses, like, I can't do this anymore. Anthony Bourdain, I can't do this anymore. And you think at that age that he's conquered his demons, right? And yet you just day by day. So I actually thanked Bill for getting to the top of that volcano. The photos of me on the top, I look completely washed out. I look like I died. But I'm forever, I watch the documentary a lot now. Obviously, it's screening, and I just learn from him with almost every screening. There's some little gem that I didn't discover before, or I hear it in a different way. And I'm forever grateful for him for that and sharing that with us. He didn't have to go so deep, He didn't have to be so personal. He could have been, gloss it over. Here's I said, it's not going to relate though. Kids are not going to tap into that unless they see what you bounce back from. When they see how low you got, then maybe you'll get them. And it's been so far the case that we've been able to reach them.
And it's interesting. He talks about a speech that he gave. He was part of a group of speakers, speaking very profound issues, and coming up with what to talk about. He talks about the 11th Commandment.
Yes. Love thyself.
Love thyself.
Well, I actually thought when I first saw that, well, that's going to raise some hackles, because obviously there's a big religious factor to that too. But if you really see how he delivers that and what that means to him, and you understand it's crucial for him, and it was his saving. So Bill was denied love as a child. He came from a very patrician family, and there was no love. His mother was very distant. His grandfather had already jumped off of a building at that point. So he never learned how to love. So he had failed marriages. He didn't know how to give or receive love. And then ultimately it was self-love that cured him. So I always say thematically, this is not a film about mental health. It's a film about love. And I learned a lot from him regarding what I was going through something at that time, and I just was able to pull from it. And changes the way that I think about my friends. And when it's easy to choose hate, if you can take a moment and choose love or choose the kinder thought, it really does affect your day.
Well, I mean, they say that the 3 hardest things to say are, I love you, I'm sorry, I need help.
Oh, and they're crucial.
Those
Yeah.
are, you need to be able to say those with confidence in the right situation.
Yeah.
Because I could see saying one of those things or 2 of those things in an inappropriate situation.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Here's a question for you. With
Yes.
everything that's going on right now, let's keep it not political, men versus women. Have you changed the way some of the questions that you have to find yourself asking female filmmakers, or
Nope.
has it? I love that.
I don't, because
I love that. Yeah.
And can I just say that,
Yeah.
like, from the beginning of having started Film Thread, when I was in high school, I didn't like, when I went off to college, it's making films, and you go to film festivals, and there would be the women's filmmakers group. And I'd say, well, but why? Aren't they just filmmakers?
Yeah.
Or they would be the black filmmakers, right?
Yeah.
And I was offended.
Yeah.
I was like, but why are they being marginalized to be in a... And it would always be in a smaller room, which was offensive, a smaller room, and it would be at an off time. And I'm like, how about just part of the festival? How about these are the filmmakers? We just had that discussion with another... I don't like the... this comes up every once in a while, this identity politics that divides us.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain... Inclusion is important, but divisiveness through identity is... I mean, this is why I love movies, because I can see a movie and I can be a trans person, and I can, to the best of my ability as an old white guy, feel things that a trans person feels and struggles through the power of film.
Yeah.
I don't like the being treated differently, whether and my family's not all white, right? Just through marriage and whatnot. Like,
Yeah.
it's not all not all white. So
Yeah.
whatever. And so I've never liked that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I don't like, you know what? You're a filmmaker. You're a doc filmmaker. Okay, so we'll go by genre or whatever, but I never like that kind of division. And I think you're a filmmaker means you're a professional. It means you made a film. And now, if there are ways that can help with regard to inclusion, I think that's positive.
Yeah.
But to separate due to some sort of weird identity, it's like, no, we're humans. We're humans. I don't. Bill Nye has a great quote about race and about how it's just the reason that skin color is different is because you just lived in a different place that had colored your skin differently. It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's still human.
Yeah.
It's from the human
Yeah.
form. So I'm curious, what do you think? Because we're living in interesting times where conversations that should have been had years ago we're having. And what's funny is if you look at the very first issue of Film Thread, which came out on February 6, 1985, we have posted this declaration of principles on our front page, and we just talk about the sexism and racism in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that's the first issue in 1985. Now,
I've held that in my hand.
yeah, I have one copy of that. There were 500 copies printed. And so now we're living in a time where I feel like I've been fighting these battles since the beginning of my career. So I think it's kind of like, oh, that's great. So you guys are finally, they call it woke, right?
You're
we
woke.
We used to call it become aware.
No, it's hashtag woke.
Hashtag woke. Okay,
Everything's
whatever.
hashtag woke, yeah.
But we
Got to
would
the
call
hashtag
it,
in there.
back when I was doing Film Thread in the 80s, we would just say you need to become aware of that the media plays on stereotypes, the media plays on division, the media is sexist by nature and racist in a lot. I think things are better now. I think there's a long way to go. But now I kind of see us slipping back in some ways. But now that I have gone on this long diatribe, my apologies for that.
You don't want to get me on a soapbox about this issue.
Yes.
Seriously, you don't want to get me on it.
No, I
have
do.
very
I want to
strong-
hear what you look. I hogged the time, and I. This is my one problem with the podcast. I talk too much, so I want to know what you think, especially as a doc filmmaker, because you have an eye that you're looking at things differently.
Here's what's fascinating to me as a woman, and and every other woman who's in the workplace will understand this, is that what you guys are now dealing with right now is something that was just an ism for us when we got up in the day. It wasn't like, oh, right, I have to get over sexism and then I can start my day. We start the day knowing we're going to be having to smacked in the face with it at some point, right? It's either going to be overt or subtle. For the longest time, I've been a filmmaker for 25 years. I would go pitch at Paramount and I would be the only woman in a sea of male faces. And it was very difficult. You couldn't bitch and moan to your colleagues or your fellow executives and say, you're the only woman in there. But you literally would just walk in the room and they would just look at you head to toe. And it was so overt. And you have to you're there to pitch a film, right? You're there. I mean, Agent Cody Banks was my first project. Very lucky out the gate. But I would walk into a room, sea of male faces, get over the fact that whatever they think about me, they've just made their mind up about it. And now I have to convince them that I have a head on my shoulders that thinks this is going to be an amazing film, and I have to pitch that to them and get over it. So when I say that, it's like that's what we in the women who work have to deal with. So now what's happening is that men are encountering it on such a subtle level, and they're like, wah, wah. And we're like, we don't understand. You're such babies. We've lived with this our entire working lives. Get the fuck over it and deal with where we are. And I've engaged on Facebook, which is never. It's never the right thing to do. No, it's never. It's never a good idea. But when you hear guys going, "Well, I've had sexism. This is how it," I'm like, no, you really haven't. You don't even know what this is about. So I feel like to your point, it's the awakening. It's the dawning of men finally having a light bulb turned on and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, like." You guys don't know you're doing it. You know what I mean? It's not like you're doing it on purpose. It's just now you're aware of it, and it's uncomfortable because you've just taken off your training wheels and you're trying to ride your bike, and it's like you don't want to run into a wall. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to make a sexist joke. And that's the backlash that I hate. Like, I love dudes. Like, I love guys. I love having, bawdy conversations with them. But you don't want someone to be like standing on principles like the girls are over there and the boys are over here because of this issue. It's more like, let's all be uncomfortable for a while until we work it out. And then it comes back to, can you just be polite? I mean, if it all falls back, like one of the arguments about, this is pretty early on, if I ask a girl out, an agent said it, if I ask a girl out and she says no, is that sexual description? Am I coming at her the wrong way? It's like, no, she said no. Now, if you keep asking her like over and over, right, that's just, you don't do it. So
or promise her things.
Or promise. Would you like to expound on that?
No.
It's just common sense. It's like, nobody wants to be hammered, so to speak, like with a go, let's go out. But as a woman in the industry, when a executive asks you out, if you're a junior to that executive, you're thinking two things. Like, if I say no, will I be fired? If I say yes, will it help my career, but will it be seen wrong? Really, it's just, do you fancy each other or do you not? That's all it comes down to. It's got nothing to do with, is this going to help me or not going to help me?
See, my theory on this is going to sound my theory on this is that this is why every advanced civilization encountered by the characters in the Star Trek series, they go to a planet and everybody's wearing the same clothes, both the men and the women. You reach a point in an advanced civilization where you're like, all right, forget it. We're just all wearing the same clothes. We might designate by engineering and science, but we're all just going to wear the same outfit. We're going to have the same, which is, I find always kind of funny. It's sort of you see this in a lot of science fiction, is they go to a planet. This is the planet where the people all dress in the silver outfits with this hat. Like this is, I think, where we might be going with this. But okay, I was trying to make it, because I'll say this. Yeah. This is the one thing that does sort of kill me, is that I like to joke. I like to joke and have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a vulgar sense of humor, not at someone's expense, although that has happened in certain situations. But I think that this is a good thing. This is a good thing that's happening, because I used to feel like I was in the minority in that sense of just being aware of it, and especially when you see people just being. I mean, I just thought it was just people just being impolite, right?
Yeah.
People who are, to me, it was the shorthand to seeing if someone was stupid as if they were racist. Yeah. If you're racist, it's like, oh, that means you're dumb. For me, growing up, that was always the thing. It's like, well, if you're racist, you just are not
You're ignorant,
evolved
yeah.
in because you think things that are small-minded.
Yeah.
But you see it in a lot of ways. You notice it. It's to me because I was just brought up to be very polite.
Mm-hmm.
Walk on the correct side of the street and whatnot. Like there's just certain ways of that. I guess because my my grandparents kind of they grew up in a different era. My grandparents, so like hearing from them, they're just all about politenesses and I think
it's not rocket science. That's the thing.
That's what I'm saying.
It's so simple. It's not rocket science. If you are struggling with it, you are overthinking it, right?
But also, I just as a shorthand, I feel like you got to date outside your work circle. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I feel like that just solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
A lot of problems. It's just something, I don't know. I mean, a lot of companies have policies about that, but I'm so glad that you brought that up.
I was actually driving over thinking, gosh, you've been doing this for a long time. I've been following you for a long time, and I just thinking, how has it affected you guys and the questions that you ask, and do you come at it? Are you slightly more timid, or are you just like who you are? But it sounds like if that was your mandate starting out, then you were already woke. Hashtag.
Well, it was a mandate, but I will say this: it's difficult. I mean, frankly, to find non-white guys to be in this space, right? I mean, we're in the space where we cover films, and I love filmmakers and love movies, especially documentaries. Documentaries, I could say I have sort of I love docs probably more than some, but in that space, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I just think inclusion, diversity has always been important to me. But it was always so hard, especially before the internet. It was hard, to try and recruit oh God, we got to get some. There's just too many guys, too many. It ends up being a boys' club, which, having survived the jockocracy of school, I was never a part of that. I was a nerd who was bullied and picked on, right? No surprise.
Same here.
Exactly. So
and
I feel
look
like
at you guys now.
What's that?
And look at you guys now.
Look, we're still nerds, right? I guess nerds are cool, but nerds can also be...
Nerds are totally cool.
Entitled and jerks.
You've transcended nerdism, I think.
Maybe. But having just survived the jockocracy, I didn't have a traditional college pathway, a traditional educational pathway, because I just had no interest in being part of that fraternity culture that was horrifying.
Yeah.
In fact, fun fact, I dropped out of college and wrote a book, ended up years later writing a book that's required reading in college. So
that's phenomenal.
I wrote a book called The Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide.
And I read it.
Thank you.
I didn't know that it was on a curriculum. That's phenomenal. Congratulations.
AFI, NYU, USC, UCLA. It's part of their independent film studies program. I've done speaking engagements at those colleges, but
it was required reading at my film school, which was Brooks Institute.
Are you just dating him? Did you throw that in there to date him?
A little bit,
no.
But yeah, I just traditional path. But see, look, I wasn't trying to be. I think in the medical field, you need traditional path. What I was trying to do in the arts and growing up kind of dirt poor, it wasn't. So I came up with a different path, right?
But doesn't that make you more interesting? I didn't go to film school either. I literally learned on the job, right? And I feel like that we try harder, we wake up earlier, we work longer, and we stay later because we want to be, we need to sort of make up for that lack, which we feel is a lack. I went to Paramount Pictures, I was in business affairs, tripped into business affairs as an assistant, but learned the contract side of filmmaking. Who knew I was going to be a producer in a few years, right? So suddenly I know how the studios make all their deals. So that was like insider. Then I go to work for Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. Now I'm working on a set with Stanley Kubrick on learning the practical side. I mean, could you learn that at USC or UCLA? I don't know.
But yeah, all of that is like you learn like on the job, right?
You learn it on the job. And then, I always go back to, at some point, whoever made the first film did not go to film school. It was right? I mean, what are you trying to say? You're better than they are? It's like, no, I think everyone has a story to tell, at least one story to tell.
Okay, wait, if I could stop you for a second. Back up. So you worked on Eyes Wide Shut?
Yes.
Okay. talk for the next hour.
Easy, Tiger.
Which we had, and okay, so yeah, and also I happen to be a big Tom Cruise fan.
Oh, me too.
I love Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
I think that I even did, this was years ago, I did a TV show, we did a whole tribute to Tom Cruise, and my analysis of his career, I think he's a brilliant actor that is handicapped from the standpoint of he's too good looking.
Yeah, and too successful.
Yeah. So what does he need these other...
Why does he need an Oscar?
Why does he need an Oscar?
Yeah.
You know, even though he's been nominated, right? Why does he need an Oscar? I have been huge fan of him for years. I think he's a brilliant artist. But see, also, I'm from a journalistic standpoint, I didn't even know Nicole Kidman and he were married until he did Eyes Wide Shut. And it's like, oh, they're married. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, that explains like how they could be so intimate. But I don't care about the personal lives of celebrities. I find it incredibly uninteresting. Unless in some form it affects the work, I think it's irrelevant. Because my purpose in talking about film and whatnot is to talk about the film.
Yeah.
The personal, I think there's an obsession. I might have mentioned this before, that like when I started to have some semblance of a TV career, I was offered to be on the gossip show on E! And I said no, because not only do I not care about gossip, I have no context because I don't keep up with it. But I feel that now we're living in a post-Kardashian age where it's all about invasion of privacy. I feel like you should be able to, like, you know, I assume you go to work, you take your work hat off, you hang it on the thing, you're done with work, and then you have a life that's different, or maybe not. It does sort of, in the entertainment industry, it's difficult because they do kind of meld,
but
right?
I make no apologies for it. My work is my life. I love what I do. I feel blessed to be a filmmaker. I don't know how I got to be so lucky and that I get to make a living out of doing this. So I don't often, these guys will. So Christine and I met working for Tom Cruise.
Oh, wow.
She used to work for Dustin Hoffman, and then she came over and worked for Tom Cruise, and we've been friends ever since. Like, and the testament to the kind of people that were able to stick at that job was that we are all best friends now. We still have these, you know, dates where we all go out and hang out with each other, and we go, do you remember the time when ... And I joke, say, remember that time when Tom said, we're going to be in the Antarctic for 3 minutes, we need the submarine to come up, I'll helicopter in, if you guys could prepare lunch and have it on that one iceberg. And we're like, yep, got it, Tom. So we would joke about that because it was, yes, that's extreme, but the caliber of people that were able to work for them would have been able to do that. And so I always say, having worked for Tom and Nick for 3 years, as I did, made me feel I was confident enough to start my own production company and become a producer. And I've said it to them, my career is because I was able to work with them and not get fired.
Well, I feel like when Tom Cruise is 100,
I'll make that dog.
Make a documentary. Tom Cruise, Will to Live. You could do that.
Bookend.
Bookend.
Yeah.
For sure. But okay, so I mean, do you have some stories you could? Because Eyes Wide Shut is, I mean, Stanley Kubrick as a filmmaker is, you know, incredible.
Yeah.
And that film in particular, I think, is amazing in for a couple of reasons. One, you know, he passed away before it was released. And normally his process, part of Kubrick's process was 2001: A Space Odyssey came out, it was 20 minutes longer, right? So he would generally, and this is also an age when movies were released differently, right?
Yes.
They'd come out and they did these, literally came out in a couple theaters in the United States, and then they'd continue to cut it. I mean, they did that with Star Wars. George Lucas continued to re-edit. I mean, I'm not talking about the special editions. I'm talking about it only opened on 10 screens. So Eyes Wide Shut, the theory behind it is that movie was released unfinished. It was as close to, and there's a guy I know who did a re-edit of it that I think is actually pretty spectacular.
I'd love to see that.
I'll get you the information after but he did a recut of it that is really incredible.
I'd love to see that.
And he did all of this research about Stanley Kubrick and his process, and read everything he could about Eyes Wide Shut to at least try to interpret what Kubrick would have done. But what was your experience working on that film with Tom?
Sink or Swim. It was my first film, and I was told that I was living here. I mean, I'm British, but I was living here, and I was told we were going to go over there for 3 or 4 months to make a film with Stanley Kubrick, and I just thought, oh, cool, 13 months later, I had to have my dog shipped out from LA back to England, put it into quarantine. And I mean, it ended up being, I've never worked on a project that was shrouded in such secrecy. That was fascinating. Just seeing the lengths that paparazzi would go to before they were called paparazzi back then, right? Because they weren't quite so accessible. It was, how could they get in? It was an amazing experience. I remember I was sitting in Tom's trailer, and it was Tom Nix, Stanley, and me, and I was thinking, what doesn't belong here? And I'm just looking, I was going, it just seemed so surreal. But I was learning on the fly, and that's a challenge. And I was watching the dynamics on a film set, which was fascinating. I was, looking at this legend, and then this other legend, and then another legend, and I'm just trying to think what I can and can't say. I mean, these guys know all the stories, obviously.
Look, first of all, I could care less about anything of a personal nature, because I feel that's an invasion. With any friend, do you gossip about the intimate secrets of friends?
No,
other
of course
friends
not.
that are uninvolved?
No.
I feel like that's rude, right? That
Right.
would be rude. But as it relates to the film, I would love to hear anything about just that stuff is just so. I mean, it's also, people forget Eyes Wide Shut is a Christmas movie. It's a Christmas movie. People forget this.
It was, what I loved about it was Stanley's process. I remember thinking when, it used to be, I got into the studio because if you want to be a filmmaker at that time, it was the only way to do it. There were no consumer cameras, right? You couldn't do it on your own. So if you really wanted to be in film, you had to go work at a studio. So that was why I initially went there. And watching knowing how expensive films were, I watched Stanley's process. He didn't care about the money. Every night we were getting different sides, and then there were new sides delivered in the morning because he was writing overnight, and so every day, and they're trying things out. We'd have closed sets, we'd have open sets, and just watching how he took the way that he controlled his set. I think it's probably very well known how controlling he was. I was surprised by that, but that he allowed himself the process to be a filmmaker while he was filmmaking. I've always been somebody who has over prepared for everything, so that whatever comes up, you're just putting that thing out in production. So to watch this legend make a film and try things and build that set, tear that down, I try this, Tom, slow it down. I just love that at the beginning anyway, it was very play. It was very much like play, and money wasn't a factor, and I really enjoyed that. But then obviously as we went over and over and over, it became more and more tense. Sidney Pollack taught me how to cook Italian food, and I still use his ingredients to this day. Bless his heart. He was amazing. Wow. A lot of downtime on that film. What do you want to know? I'll see what I can answer.
I think we have to do another podcast if we're gonna
delve into
that. Yeah,
I do have a theory. You said what I think. So he passed away, before he could edit the film, and I don't know this to be fact at all. This is just my interpretation. I remember thinking that Tom was so attached to that film and its outcome, and he and Stanley had such a strong bond. I think Tom went in there and had a lot to do with the edit, and they're very different people. And I think that, for me, I didn't think it ended up being a good film at all. And I think that was the problem, is that he's such a maverick. Not Tom, no pun intended. That Stanley was such a maverick. How do you tap into that? You don't know what was in his head when he was filming something, or how he was going to use it, and I think that was one of the biggest problems. But I don't know that to be fact. It was just what I thought.
Well, an actor who's also a filmmaker, Marshall Allman, he did the re-edit of Eyes Wide Shut, and I wrote an article about it on the Film Threat website. I'll share it with you after.
Yeah, I'd love to.
But I'd love to get your take on what you think this recut is. I actually think it's a better film.
Are they going to re-release it?
No.
Oh, so
it's basically a fan edit.
It's a fan edit. Okay. I'm obsessed with fan edits of films. Like taking a movie that it was either unfinished, or there's a filmmaker has a different vision for how it can be changed. So I love those. So I'm obsessed with watching those, the sort of re-edit of everything from Batman v Superman to things.
Did you see Rob Burnett's Star Trek?
Which one?
The one that he got into trouble with. Rob's a dear friend, so like they got into trouble with it. The one
you're talking about Robert Meyer Burnett?
I am.
I know Robert Meyer Burnett.
You do. I know you do. He's like a dear
Wait a second.
friend.
Have we met before?
Yes.
Where?
I produced My Date with Drew, and I know that we had interaction way back then with the guys.
Oh my God. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
It's been a long time ago and stuff, but yeah.
Okay,
But
yeah.
Rob and I, we're great friends. We had a company together years and years. And
Yeah,
years ago.
Rob. He lives in Pasadena, where I live.
Uh-huh.
Not too far from me, and he's lived there for over a year. We have not gotten together.
Rob, get on it. Rob, if
when
you're
are we
listening.
going to happy hour? Rob Meyer Burnett.
He's coming to my
Dude.
premiere tomorrow night. Come to the
Is
premiere
he?
and just don't even
Oh
see
my
the film.
God.
Just
You
come
know
and
what?
hang out
I'm
with
out
him.
of town. I'm flying to a film festival.
Oh.
I'm at the Tucson Film Festival.
Okay, well, I'll tell him you said hello.
Yeah, tell Rob I said hi.
Well, actually, I think you're telling him right now.
Yeah, exactly. When you mention Agent Cody Banks, I'm like, she must know Rob. I'll ask.
I love Rob.
Yeah. So that's so cool. Okay, and then, you're legit movie nerd.
And
if you're friends with Rob,
do
you
know
are
Zach,
legit movie nerd.
Do you know Zach Stentz? From what's he working on right now? He did X-Men. One of the X-Men. He did the Sarah Connor Chronicles. He wrote, writer.
No, I don't know.
You should have him on your podcast. He's a genius.
Should I?
Yes. I have a project with him right now that we're shopping around town. It was a feature, and I've just turned it into a TV show, but Rob introduced me to Zach and Ashley, who were writing Sarah Connor Chronicles, and they had done Andromeda.
Right.
Remember Andromeda?
Yeah.
And they were showrunners, I think, on Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Is it about Ashley Miller?
Edward Miller, yeah. And
Yeah.
they were writing partners. They split up.
He is
about a year
a
ago.
favorite on the Starship Smackdown,
Oh,
which is how I end every San Diego Comic-Con. I gotta just sit in Starship Smackdown and just entertain me for the next hour and a half while I debrief my
bathe in it.
San Diego Comic-Con experience. I love that. It's one of my favorite panels at conventions.
Awesome.
I don't know how to turn that into a movie, but yeah, I would love to. Well, when we open up, we're supposed to open up this Film Threat, recording studio, this is now why we're in the parlor on Melrose Avenue, recording. The owner of this bar is a Film Threat fan and graciously allows us to record here. But eventually we're supposed to be opening up our studio.
Well, I got Zach and Ashley to write a spec script for Agent Cody Banks, and all the producers brought in their
This
writers.
is where all the connections are.
Yes, but Rob introduced me to Zach and Ashley, and then Zach and Ashley wrote a spec script, and then I went, treatment, and then I pitched it with all the other producers, and they won out, and then that got them their feature careers, and so we've been friends, and we'll be
that's
forever.
so great.
But you should have Rob, Zach, and me on, and we can tell you hilarious stories.
Okay, all right, done.
Done.
We're gonna do when we open the studio, and we got
We'll
the whole
christen
setup.
it.
We will christen the studio. Yeah, because we've been working toward this for a while to have a studio where we can really just have those long conversations.
Yeah.
and get into depth.
But keep
on all
it
this
cool like this, so it's not like all pomp and circumstance.
It's not going to be stuffy. It's going to be like I'm not a fan of that antiseptic studio. Let's have it sound perfect. I know he hates that.
Are you a fan of John Barrowman?
Of course.
So John
we
wrote
work with him on Attack of the Show.
Okay, so
John is great.
John and his sister Carol wrote a book a series called the Hollow Earth series. Okay, so I optioned it with a friend. Zach is going to write it, and you should have John in because you've met him, right? So he's just hilarious.
Oh my God, met him. I work with him.
Funniest man in the world.
Work with him on Attack. Oh my God, yes.
And so smart. People don't understand how smart he is. Great actor, hilarious, but so savvy, business savvy.
Yeah. Wow.
Small world.
Well, okay, so we have to have you back on the show.
Love to.
Wait a sec. So you live in Los Angeles, but you're right now making a doc in Rwanda.
No, I live in Playa Vista, and for the last year, I've been filming in Asia and Africa a project called Breaking Their Silence, Women on the Front Line of the Poaching War. It's going to blow your mind. It's a documentary, but these women broke their silences in ways that could get them killed.
Will you come back and talk about that doc on the show?
I would love to, yeah. I'm editing right now. It won't be finished till probably January.
All right. Okay. Well, unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. But what can you tell? Tell me about Bill Coors' Will to Live. It's out.
So it's playing in New York right now, limited release, and we open in Santa Monica tomorrow, which is October the 12th for a week, and then we open in Denver in 2 theaters October the 19th. So, and everything that you need to know about the film, you can go to our website, which is www.billcoorsthewilltolive.com.
Kerry David, thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Thank you so much. This was really fun.
This will be the first of many conversations.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you
so much.
I was the last speaker to give a 20-minute address to high school seniors headed for college.
Probably the most important thing that you must achieve if you are going to achieve success is what I refer to as the 11th commandment. Thou shalt love thyself.
Bill Coors is my father. Accomplished businessman, captain of industry, helped Coors become one of the leading brewers in the world today.
He had to face such trauma in his life.
My older brother, Adolf, had passed on. I don't think we understood how to handle it. There is so much stress in the world.
I started to shut people out and then I lost them because I was afraid.
People can be miserable and they need a friend. So I decided to teach them how to cope with it.
Bill's helped so many people with his holistic methods on how you can find that hope.
If you love and accept yourself, you're truly going to be able to love anyone else.
You can be your own light at the end of the tunnel.
Love is all kinds of things to people. The poets write about it, the composers compose about it, the artists paint about it. Love can be extended not to one, two, but to hundreds and thousands of people. The only person in the world that you cannot like is yourself.